Forge FC is ready for their upcoming match.
Simply stunning stuff! And finally, their goal! My word, what a rocket!
Now, let's get you up to date with Anthony Urciuoli and Match Day Preview on the Forge Audio Network.
Hello, Forge fans. It's the Forge Audio Network. Welcome back. It's Match Day Preview. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. Another big one this weekend. Forge FC on a weekly basis. We are talking the playoffs before the playoffs. Just game after game with major playoff implications, first place implications. What happens in the next few weeks will determine the path Forge takes to a potential final again. Here's what we're facing. You have Forge FC in third place, taking on Valour this weekend, Saturday, 2 o'clock, our local time here in Hamilton. That's Hamilton time. You might say Eastern time. I say Hamilton time because I don't leave the city very often. This is all I know. So Forge traveling to Winnipeg to take on Valour. Match time, 2 o'clock. Did I say Saturday? I was wrong. I started the broadcast out with a huge lie. It is on Sunday, September 17th at 2 o'clock at Investors Group Field in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Forge coming off a scoreless draw at home against Cavalry. Valour, meanwhile, picking up a massive win on the road, beating York 3-1. York needing a win as they are on the outside looking in of the playoff race, and they lost 3-1 at home. Now, there was a red card in the match. Talked to York, and they were screwed. But, I mean, end of the day, you lost 3-1 to Valour at home while you were in the thick of a playoff race. For Forge, though, we've seen this now. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, Forge, they've played in playoff-like games. They played Cavalry last weekend. 2 weeks before that, they played at Ottawa, and that was a scoreless draw. When they get into these playoff-like matchups, things are a little tight. There's not much space. It's a little more physical. And you end up in these situations where neither team wants to make a mistake. And a lot of times, you end up in these low-scoring, tight matchups. And Forge has been in a couple of them. Unfortunately, that result last weekend, that single point, while valuable, that's not what Forge wanted. I mean, they needed 3 because they still were looking at that matchup as a potential opportunity to move into first place and perhaps jump over Cavalry at some point. That, while not impossible, probably impossible at this point. But the silver lining is that while first place is nice, right? It gets you CONCACAF into CONCACAF play. It gets you a trophy, it gets you an award for the best team of the regular season. But that's nice. This team wants a championship. That is what this team is about. Forge FC is about championships. The path to getting there, if you finish in the top 2, is, I mean, it's essentially a lottery ticket. If you finish in the top 2, it is not only, it's better than a bye. You are given an extra path to the final because 1 plays 2. The winner goes straight to the final. The loser goes to the semifinal. You can, if you finish in the top 2, you can lose a playoff game and still make it to the final. It is an amazing luxury, and it is what Forge FC has to have their sights set on. And for that to happen, Forge will have to pass Pacific, which they will be able to do next week. That's when they're playing Pacific. At home, it's going to be a pivotal matchup and a must-win matchup for Forge FC. Now, the danger, of course, is that Forge can't worry about that now because they have to take care of business on the road this weekend. It can't be one of these trap games where they're looking at their next opponent. And I highly doubt that would happen because we have never really seen that with Forge at all under Bobby Smirniota. So that is not a worry that I have. But Forge has to take care of business because Valour coming off a very impressive win. And while they are not officially out of playoff contention, are they out of? I'm just trying to do math in my head. I mean, well, no, not officially, but basically. Valour, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Valour's not qualifying for the postseason this year. But they appear very happy to play spoiler like they did against York. Looking at the table, we've already talked about it, but just, officially, Forge FC in third place with 36 points. They're now 7 back of Calvary. Pacific is in second. Valour in second last place with 23 points. They're only 3 points ahead of Vancouver, the expansion club. It seemed like a foregone conclusion for most of the year that Vancouver was going to finish at the bottom of the table, but they have an opportunity to pass Valour, which could be, that could be interesting and a little bit embarrassing if you're Valour. So I think if you are Valour, there's a lot of pride at stake here, and you really want to start collecting points down the stretch. At home, Valour has not been very good. Through 11 matches, 3 wins, 4 draws, 4 losses for 13 points. We don't have to get into Forge's home record because they're not at home this week, but I will bring it up because it is not much better than Valour's, and that's a major problem. But we'll talk about that next week in the match day preview when Forge is at home against Pacific. That row. Look, at the end of the year, when you're looking back at the schedule and, we should have had points here, there. They might be looking at matches against Vancouver where they dropped points. But yeah, the home record is one they definitely need to improve upon, but they will not be able to do it this week because they are the away team, and away from home, Forge has been very, very good. In fact, they are the top road team in the league in terms of points per match. In 12 matches, they have 6 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses, and they will need whatever magic's been working for them on the road. They will need to carry that over to Investors Group Field this weekend. Head-to-head, Valour's always been very tough for Forge, regardless of what the table looks like heading into their matchups. Forge FC with 8 wins in the head-to-head matchup. Valour was 7, and they've drawn twice this season. They played 3 times. Forge won 3-2 at home back in May. A month later in June, Valour won at home 2-0. And the following match in Hamilton, Forge and Valour played to a 1-1 draw. Speaking of points of the season where Forge dropped points where they probably shouldn't have, but it is what it is. Head-to-head streaks. This is Forge, despite being a formidable defensive club with the best keeper this league has ever seen. Head-to-head, and remember, Forge leads the league. I mean, they lead the league, like far and away lead the league in clean sheets this year. It's not even close. They have gone 16 matches against Valour without a clean sheet. So Valour has scored against Forge in 16 straight matches. That's a pretty incredible stat. Especially, Valour has struggled quite a bit, not when it comes to scoring goals against Forge, apparently. And the interesting thing about that, Valour has scored in 16 straight matches against Forge. There have been less than 3 goals in matchups between these two clubs 4 out of the last 5 times. So they've still gone under 2.5 goals. And 7 of those 8, in 7 of the last 8 matchups between these clubs, Valour has scored first. That first goal, we talk about it every single week. It is paramount. And Valour has struck first in 7 out of the last 8 matchups. That'll be something Forge will obviously look to be changing. Now, the positive spin on Forge's recent run, there have been a lot of draws, not a ton of wins, but they haven't lost in their last 5 matchups. So unbeaten always sounds a little better than just 1 win in their last, few games. Forge, by the way, have gone 3 straight matchups where they have not allowed a goal, which is impressive. 3 straight clean sheets for Tristan Henry. Valour, meanwhile, they've gone 5 matches without a clean sheet. They've been scored on in 5 straight matchups. And despite those tight matchups against those low scoring matches against Forge, Valour has gone over 2.5 goals in 5 straight matchups, and both teams have scored in 4 out of 5. So for whatever reason, and again, another contradictory stat, Valour has been first to concede in 8 of their last 10. For some reason, when they play Forge, all trends go out the window, and Valour all of a sudden looks pretty good. Something is brought. Maybe it's you play up to your opponent. Maybe you're motivated because it's Forge FC, the dynasty team of the CPL. But Valour gets up for matches against Forge FC, and that's just something Forge will have to deal with. Bobby Smirniotis and the team, they've talked about this for years. This club will always have a bullseye on their back. They are never going to have the luxury of showing up to a match in which the other club just overlooks them or takes them lightly or has an off night. Teams will bring their best every single time that orange or gray steps on to their pitch. Going into this match, the number 1 rated player in the CPL, again, this has been going on now for months, it feels like. Kyle Becker, number 1, with a 7.3 out of 10 rating on SofaScore. He is the top player and all-around player in the league, getting it all done, not making a lot of mistakes. As perfect a player you could ask for is Kyle Becker. Another Forge player makes his way back into the top 10. Mandrakar James, defender, with a 7.07 rating. He's ranked 9th in the CPL. Goal leaders this season, it's been Taran Campbell for a while. No longer the case. Ollie Bassett of Ottawa surpasses Taran Campbell. He has 11. Campbell has 10. Rubens Pasillas, by the way, 5th in the league in scoring with 7 goals. So Taran Campbell likely motivated to get back atop that stat category. This will be a stat we talk about later when we get to the 3 keys to the match, because this is a key one here. Valour, they're a young club. They got a lot of young talent, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, sometimes a little too much. In the stat category, possession lost, there are 3 Valour players in the top 5. 3 out of the top 5 players in terms of possession lost per match are from Valour. Pacifique Nyongabert, Mateo De Brienne, Andy Baquero, all in the top 10. Nyongabert loses possession 16 times per match. He leads the league. There is an opportunity here for Forge on the counter. That will be one of the keys. Spoiler alert. We'll get to that later. And the clean sheets leader continues to be Tristan Henry. 3 straight clean sheets will certainly help fortify that. He has 9 this season. The next closest keeper is from Valour. Yesley, he is tied for 2nd. He has 6. So Tristan very much in the lead. Now, as we delve a little deeper into Valour and the soccer scene in Winnipeg in general, Ed Tait, member of the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, as a writer for his years covering the CFL, specifically the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And since 2019, he has also covered Valour FC, and he joins the Match Day Preview. Ed, it's first of all, welcome back to the Match Day Preview. It's, I know you've been doing this a long time, very accomplished, you're a Canadian Football Hall of Famer. So I know you don't have to do these things. In other words, you don't need exposure. You don't need your face out there, but you agree to do them every time. So I just let you know I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's nice to be asked.
It's always fun, and again, it's rare I get to speak to a Hall of Famer.
Come on.
It's, for your work with the Blue Bombers, and you started back, I did a little bit of research back in 1987. You made it into the Hall in 2011. So just quick math, you need to write about Valour for another 24 years or so to make it into the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame.
I would be, if I was still doing that in 24 years, I'd take it. That's funny. Thanks for reading out my resume there.
It's interesting. Do you ever wonder, just with if I mean, we'll get to the match in a second, but do you wonder what your career would look like had you started in today's media landscape, and how just vastly different it is?
Well, I know it is vastly different. I don't know what it would look like. I haven't thought about that. That's a really good question. It's changed so dramatically. I go back to the days like pre-internet days, right, where you'd write for the paper and you'd race to the doorstep in the morning to see what the competitor had. That's whether you found out whether you had been beaten on a story or not, or whether you had a scoop. It's just not like today's world where everything's so instant. And um, I'm not one of those guys that's going to wax nostalgic about the good old days, so to speak. I think I like the way today's journalism is. It teaches you to be sharp. You've got to be on your toes because if you have a scoop, it's about it only lasts for about 10 seconds before everybody else has it, and then somebody else is coming up with another angle to take it to the next level right away. So it's changed. I think it's changed for the better. There's some things, of course, that I prefer about the good old days, and just in terms of checking sources and verifying things, that doesn't seem to be as much prevalent as much today. But I'm just happy to still have a job. Let's put it that way.
And now you have a soccer team to cover,
Right.
and you have for the last few years. Since this league's inception, I always Valor's been the most challenging club to read. I mean, year in, year out. One week they look like a contender, the next week it's just a disappointment. Consistently inconsistent, I guess. Is that a good way to kind of describe Valour?
It's a great way to describe them. It's funny. When I first started, I was covering the Winnipeg Fury of the old Canadian Soccer League, was one of my first beats. And that team struggled at the beginning too. And then as it got traction as a franchise, it ended up winning the last CSL championship, I believe, in a massive upset of the Vancouver Whitecaps. So there are some similarities here. We're not seeing the signs yet that this team has taken that kind of step here, this Valour team. It's been a tough season to watch them. There's pieces here and there's moments in games. There's games where you think, man, that's the way they should play. That they look dominant in that half or that stretch, and then they've really had a hard time scoring goals. Their win last week, where they beat York 3-1, was only the second time this year that they've managed to score 3 in a match. So again, there's some pieces there. They've had some injuries, but they have been consistently inconsistent, and that's one of the reasons they are where they are in the tables.
And that is until they play Forge, because it seems like they've really upped their game. I mean, the head-to-head matchups almost completely even at this point after 4+ seasons. Do you just chalk it up to just maybe feeling motivated to take on Forge? Valour just seems to up their game.
It's a real good question. I think that this team does seem to rise to the level of the competition sometimes. And look, when you're 7th place, that's everybody in front of you almost, right? But I think they have so much respect for teams like Forge and Cavalry and Pacific, the sort of the perennial contenders, that that's their measuring stick game. And I think that's what happens every time they play Forge. They have so much respect for what that franchise has done over the years. And that's where they want to get to, right? And so when you're playing the team that has set the template, you want to show that you're not that far off from that template. And I think you'll see a fired up Valour team on Sunday, because it's been a while since they've been at home. And you're right, they always seem to match up well against Forge.
What is the fan reception of Valour? Because when you're not winning, it's tough, especially if you're a new team in a new league. Has there been a drop-off in support?
Well, the diehards are there, and you got to tip your hat to the people in the trench and the Red River Rising supporters group. They're there all the time. It's a tough market. The Blue Bombers are playing well. The Jets are in training camp. The Winnipeg Sea Bears, the new team in the CEBL Basketball League, had a really good first season this summer, set all kinds of attendance records. And so there's been some frustration, admittedly, some frustration with the way this team has gone. Hasn't made the playoffs in its existence. And again, this year, really struggling to score goals. And so that's one of the things that, a lot of the new fans want to see, right? You don't want to come to the pitch and watch a team lose 1-0 or even win 1-0. You want to see some excitement. And I think Valour, because all kinds of circumstances, some injuries, and just bad timing with guys being away with the national team or being out of the lineup, being not fit. It's really affected their cohesiveness on the attack, and we've seen that a lot this year. And that's a tough sell for any franchise, especially one that has yet to make the playoffs.
And Winnipeg is a city that clearly, I mean, they support their teams. I mean, we know the history of the Blue Bombers and the Jets, even junior hockey teams. But is it maybe just soccer? They have to work a little harder to kind of get the fan attention in Winnipeg?
What really hurt this franchise was the lost season because of COVID. There was so much momentum in 2019. The first game I ever played here the attendance was 10,000, and they had a lot of momentum. Again, that team struggled in moments and missed the playoffs, but they had, there was some excitement about the next year. And then, the Island Games was a great idea to keep the league afloat and keep, people's interest. But when you're in Winnipeg and you're trying to watch your team play in PEI and you can't go to any games, and they only played 7 that year, boy, that's a hard thing to keep momentum going, isn't it? Because you've just gone dark for so long, and then coming back out of the COVID lost season and playing in the bubble here, that helped a little bit, but it hasn't been the same since, and they've got some work to do to get it back, that kind of momentum they had in year one.
Absolutely. So going into this matchup with Forge, then I guess, pride on the line in a sense, motivation to beat Forge. Also, you look at the table, and I was a little surprised to see that they were just 3 points ahead of Vancouver, the expansion club. And I mean, that alone might be motivation enough to just not want to finish dead last, especially behind an expansion club.
Right. I had a chat yesterday with Dante Campbell, who's had quietly a really good season with Valour, a guy that can play fullback and in the midfield, and was named to one of the CPL Player of the Week. And he says, look, until we're mathematically eliminated, it's head down and full speed ahead. And these guys know the situation. You've got to approach it this way for all kinds of reasons. And a lot of them are starting to think about next year. Do I have a contract with this team? Will I be back? Will I have a job? Those are the things that can be pretty powerful motivators when, you put your cleats on match day. So I think there's all kinds of things that can keep Valour motivated. Now, it's easy to say all those things. We'll get the proof in about the first 10 minutes on Sunday, right, whether this team is still motivated. But until they're mathematically eliminated, they're just going to keep putting their nose down and roll up the sleeves and try to get this thing done.
And I'm just thinking now, just in terms of fan support, it's, Hamilton and Winnipeg kind of have that. It's a nice problem to have, but you have these bigger stadiums, that can seat 25 to 30,000 people, and 5,000 people in Halifax looks great, and then 5,000 at Investors Group Field or Tim Hortons Field, it looks different. So I wonder if that's always kind of skewing, because the reason I thought about fan support is I'm like, oh, I see empty seats, but that doesn't necessarily tell me much because it is a bigger stadium.
It's a great point, because the building here offers so many things that people can't see to the soccer club. They've got a beautiful facility in the corner opposite of the Bombers where, they've got a great area to train, the workout facility that, they get fed every day. There's a lot of little things that, you don't see that make this, I think, kind of a 5-star franchise in this league. And yet when you watch a game on TV and there's a good crowd, 4,000 or 5,000 people here, this building holds 33,000. So it's lost. And you make a good point about the Wanderers setup. It looks so amazing. But, talking to some of our people that have been there, they're changing in a trailer, and, they don't have the same amenities here. So there's the trade-off, right? Of you want it to be intimate. You want it to look packed and look great on television. And Halifax has certainly mastered that. But then there's a lot of other things that this franchise can offer its players in terms of this daily routine that some other teams, Forge excluded, can't necessarily offer because of the venue.
Absolutely. And then there's also and I don't know what you do about it, but, seeing kind of the football grid lines on the soccer pitch, that kind of takes away a little bit.
They do a great job of that here, though, Anthony. I'll give you credit. Like, after the Bombers practice here for the next few days and then are in Hamilton on the weekend, But the minute they're done practicing here, we've got crews that'll be out there taking the lines off the field. They're out there till the middle of the night a lot of times, and then putting them back on when the football team's back up. So you can see the kind of the shadows of where they used to be, but at least those yard stripes from the football field aren't on there anymore.
Yeah, and again, that's interesting because the work that goes in, just the grounds crew and changing the signage and changing the logos and all that. Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, you wouldn't have that problem in Halifax, for example. Interesting. Ed Tait, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being so accommodating. And I look forward to our next chat.
Right on. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.
3 keys to the match for Forge FC. Looking for all 3 points in this one. And to help them get there, they're going to need at least... No, we're going for all 3. We need all 3 keys to get the job done this week. Key number 1 for Forge FC, I teased it earlier, counter ready. Valour did a great job hanging on to the ball in their dominant win over York last week. And they have some dynamic young talent on their roster, eager to make an impact with every touch. Sometimes, though, a little too eager. If you look up lost possession per match, you will see 3 Valour players in the top 5. Forge should be able to create with their counter, attack with speed, and force Valour into some uncomfortable situations defensively. They have to be ready to counter. Counter ready is key number 1. Key number 2, find the gaps. Valour can be susceptible to turnovers. We just talked about that. But they also lead the league in interceptions and give up the 3rd most goals in the CPL. That tells me something. I should tell you something as well. Aggression is not just limited to the attack. Anytime a club plays that aggressively in their defensive third, and it makes sense if you have a young team, you get impatient. Listen, you don't want to, especially if you're a young player, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot to prove. You don't want to sit there and watch the other team possess the ball and play around with it and break you down. It's frustrating. It's very difficult to play disciplined defensive style because you want the ball. You want to be on the attack. It's not fun to defend in any sport, and not soccer certainly falls under that category. So they can get aggressive playing defensively. And when a club gets aggressive in their defensive third, they leave gaps. There has to be space in behind them. There just has to be exploiting them. Now, it's easier said than done. It requires quick ball movement and quick player movement off the ball, but the gaps, they are going to be there. Forge has to find them, move on them quickly, and exploit them. Find those gaps. Key number 3 for Forge FC. Simple. Hit the target. Last time these clubs played, the match ended in a draw, 1-1 at Tim Hortons Field. Forge had 18 attempts on goal, 9 outside the box, 9 inside the box. So Forge had 18, Valour had 5, but both only scored 1 goal. Forge is going to get opportunities to find the target. They always have against Valour. They have to hit it. Of course, you want to beat the keeper, but sometimes you can overthink it. You can get a little too cute. Force the keeper to make stops. Even if he makes the stop, there are rebounds. There are second chance opportunities. There are third chance opportunities. It creates havoc inside the area. Watch. Every time you see a shot hit the target and the goalie is forced to make a save, oftentimes, sure, the goalie might catch it, might deflect it over the bar, might deflect it out of play. Great. That means you get a corner out of it. If he doesn't catch it, and a lot of times if it's hard enough, it's from within close range, they're not going to catch it. That means second, third chance opportunities. It creates chaos. That is what you're looking for. Force the keeper to make stops. Don't let him off easy, right? When a keeper sees that a player's winding up to shoot, it's a little nerve-wracking. The greatest relief a keeper can feel is if that ball sails over the bar, goes outside the post. Now it's a goal kick. It's a sigh of relief. Do not let the keeper feel any relief. Get it on target. force his adrenaline up, force that heart to beat, force him into uncomfortable situations, and capitalize on those second, third chance opportunities. They just have to hit the target. All right, those are your 3 keys to the match. Forge, Valour, Sunday at 2 o'clock, Hamilton time, not Eastern time, Hamilton time. And 3 points will be critical because after that, Saturday match at home, and this is going to be the game of the season. Forge FC, home to Pacific. Second place will be on the line in that match. You cannot drop 3 points against Valour because then maybe you're not even playing for second place. Maybe you're looking to tie for second place. If Forge takes care of business this weekend, they will control their own fate. They will control whether they finish in second place or not. And they can do that by taking care of business this week and then thinking about Pacific the following week on September 23rd at Tim Hortons Field. Because after that, it does not get any easier. On the road, facing Halifax, you're playing in the most difficult stadium to play in this league, Wanderers Grounds. That's an afternoon game on a Saturday. And then 7 days after that, your season finale is at home, but it's against Atletico Ottawa, who, by the way, by the time we get there, Ottawa will have their sights set on second place. So that'll be another playoff-like game. Crucial 3 points on the line this weekend for Forge FC as they take on Valour. Remember, immediately following that final whistle, you hear that whistle, you pick up your phone, you go to your laptop. If you still have a desktop computer, I don't know why, but good for you. Good for you for sticking with tradition. You log on to YouTube, you go to our official Forge FC channel, and you will get a live match in review after Valour Forge. Hopefully, we're talking about another 3 points for the guys in orange or maybe even gray. We'll see what they're wearing that day. Until then, subscribe, keep it locked onto the Forge Audio Network. You can get us in podcast form if you would rather look at me for whatever reason. I'd question your judgment, but if you would, you find us on YouTube. Otherwise, we are all podcasted on the Forge Audio Network. Wherever you get your podcasts, do a search, subscribe, and you will get pretty much daily content from either myself or Mackenzie Barwell, who's doing an amazing job. Kyle Becker has his own show. A lot going on. So stay tuned. And until that match in review on Sunday, enjoy your week. We'll talk to you soon.
Forge FC is prepared, and now you are informed. This has been Match Day Preview with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.